We're slowly recording. The thing is whirring. There we go. So we're here today to talk about, afternoon, Andrea, when communication breaks down, how to reconnect and re-engage. Does this happen often? Who has communication breakdowns in the workplace? I used to have them all the time. That's like, I don't know what I could never understand why. I was saying felt really logical. So I couldn't understand it. It always feels logical to us. So what to do when this happens? Welcome to everyone. There's some new people. It's great to see some of you know each other. And if you have been before, you do know about me, author of the 2 Change Ninja book series. Paul's just read it and survived the adventure. If you've not got it, it's a gamified choose your own adventure. He cheated, but he did survive. I'm sure he would have made all the right decisions and got to the end anyway. The second book is more around big change that really impacts on you when you feel really stuck and procrastinating because you don't know what to do. Both available. It'd be great if you could get a copy if you haven't got one. If you're interested in any of the training or anything else, please do get in touch. And we've got a new thing coming, which is an audit of your biggest challenge. So if you've got a big challenge and you want me to help you get through it, we can put that in and see how we get on. So today's session, I always start with, you've been before, hopes and fears. Why are you here? What do you want to do out of today, and any fears you might have? It would be great if you could shout them out, but you can, if you're shy, put them in the chat box. So what do you want out of today? You've given up half an hour, 40 minutes of a sunny afternoon. What do you not want me to do?
I want, we've got proper.
Yeah, we've got polite people. Gordon, we don't want that here. Gordon.
I'll take my chance, seeing as I was polite. But yeah, I'm not usually. But yes, that I want to get out of today just some ideas. We've got a piece of change that has stopped and stalled, and it's any new ideas to kind of reinitiate that change, reinitiate that contact with the colleagues.
Okay. Brilliant. Hopefully it will help. If you're still stuck, you could come on the course and that will really help. I do a lot of selling during this. Paul.
Yeah, pretty similar. Yeah, I'm hoping for some golden nuggets of wisdom and tools that I can use. I've got a specific scenario with a certain stakeholder where we are bashing heads all the time. So yeah, anything that we can do to overcome that would be most welcome.
Okay, brilliant. Any others? Any fears? Oh, sorry, Michelle.
Just to reiterate on the bashing of the heads, I had a stakeholder that I offended, and I didn't know how I offended them, and then they came back and said we have different communication styles, and I think it was just a case that they prefer to have a script ready when communicating, so they like to have a list of questions so they have the questions answered, but they have the answers there. So knowing how to deal with that sort of stakeholder.
Okay, brilliant. It can be very, very easy to offend people without meaning to, or without knowing why you did. Any fears? Anything we don't want to do?
I think for me, as long as it's it feels like it's a good use of time and you don't ask me to sing, then I think I'll be good for fears.
No singing. Brilliant. Love it. Overrun. So let's get rid of the fears. I will keep an eye on the clock so we don't overrun. How's that? If I do overrun, because we've got some really good questions, it is getting recorded, so you can come back and we'll send you the link. I promise not to ask anybody to sing, but if you want to, please do. And good use of time. Let's check in at the end whether that is true, Alexis. On the hope side, then, we want some new ideas, some golden nuggets, wondering about this offending people when we're not really sure what we've done, and some tools, best put in tools for the new project and communication. How does that sound as an agenda? All good? Brilliant. So you've heard this before, I know, but if it's a rubbish session, it's not my fault, it's yours, because you decide and try and deliver those points. We will check in at the end. It's a great tool for aligning with your team, for conversations, for that, Michelle, for that person who you've got different communication style with. Do this before you have the next meeting. What's your fears for today? What are the hopes? It will inform and align you better. So relax a little bit more. They're less anxious about that difference. So really works for some of those communication issues. So when we get into these sort of stomping, fighty, I know we don't stomp our feet at work very often. We save that for home. But sometimes that's what's going on in our minds. We're all stamping our feet and we can't understand why someone's disagreeing and they're just being awkward. And why can't they just do what I ask them to do? It happens to us all of the time. So what do we do about it? Well, I'd like to know, what do you do? Put your hand up. If you just say, look, you've just got to do it, get on with it. Does anyone do that? Just shut up and put up. It doesn't work very well, and it doesn't work. I don't often have that option. You perhaps do this at home with the kids, though. So this stuff does work at home as well. So you might think I don't do that at work, but if you do it at home, it doesn't work at home either. You might just shake your head and think they're just being stupid and go and talk to other people about how stupid they are, and they just need to get on board with it. Perhaps you just keep saying the same thing. Does anyone want to do that? If I keep repeating myself, then give up and give in, and I'll just keep banging that same old drum. Perhaps I'll just bang my head against the wall. I'll just, I don't know what to do. I'm banging my head against the wall, again, talking to other people about it. Or perhaps you just stick your fingers in your ears and think, I'm not listening. That's quite easy to do in meetings, particularly, I think, when there's quite a few people. You just disengage. So you might do all of that, go away, and keep nagging. Brilliant, Andrea. I think that's, I don't know which image that is, but it's probably a mixture of some of them. So the trick is go away, leave it, because you're not going to get, they're triggered, you're emotionally, both of you are triggered. You're not going to respond logically in this situation. It's really hard to reach into that logic because you're annoyed, you're fed up, I wish they would just do it. So you're responding emotionally. So leave it in that. Don't try and respond immediately. If you do need to, there's breathing techniques which are in, I think, the first or the second forum. You can go and have a look at those. But some of those breathing techniques we know about to slow us down can help bring the logic back on. But essentially, when an emotional trigger is triggered, you can't respond logically. It's switched off in your brain. So if you can, leave it just there. Go away and come up with a strategy. Now, the trick is with the strategy, just have words, but to actually feel it. Is that? I used to get in trouble quite a lot for having my arms folded, and when I worked in the workplace, people used to say I was being defensive, even though I hadn't said anything. And I probably wasn't even engaged in the meeting, but I had my arms folded because for me, it's a really comfortable position. Other people have perceived I'm disagreeing with them, even though I haven't said a word. So body language is really, really key. The subconscious brain picks up things. Do any of those images make you think you're engaged in a positive way with me? Your subconscious is going to look at those and think you're trying to prove your point. You've got your hands on your hips. You look fed up. You look defensive. You look like you're not right. So whatever you're saying is irrelevant because this is what the brain is picking up. You can be saying all of the right things, but if you don't believe the thoughts, if it's a strategy to say the right things with a view to winning, then they're going to pick up on it. And it's really, really difficult unless you are unless you've been on lots and lots of courses and practice. It's really difficult not to do things without realizing what you're doing. The roll in your eyes, the twitch in your lips, whatever it is, we don't know we're doing it most of the time. They might not notice it, obviously, but their subconscious brain will notice it. So if you don't really believe the things that you're saying, they're going to notice it, and they'll notice that more than the words you're saying. So your strategy needs to be a really good strategy that you actually believe. And there's a reason. If you were here at the last session, we talked about Mr. Mindset. You've got all of these things going on in your mind at the time. So however much you're trying to convince them, if you don't believe what you're saying, there's all of that going on. And we talked about this quite a lot at the last forum. So again, if you want to know about that, go and pick up the video on YouTube. But the brain will be reacting differently to what you're saying, and that will get perceived. So how do we get past that? We need to think like a ninja and think a really good positive strategy. We want to make friends with this person. We want them to engage with us and start playing with us in a good way. So we need to be in that space ourselves. And this can be really hard, particularly if they're definitely wrong, which of course they are, because you're definitely right. But this is the ninja way, you need to let them win sometimes. But it's not just a case of giving in, it's a case of finding where you can align on things. So there's 3 things I'm going to teach you today that I think will be useful. So, or 4 things. Does anyone ever helicopter above a conversation? This is the best super skill you can have. If you can't do it in the moment, if you lift yourself out in the moment, replay it later. Lift yourself above and watch that conversation again. And watch you in that conversation. Don't be you in that conversation. Lift yourself above and just watch what's going on. Watch your interactions. Watch what you're saying and how you're responding. And slow it down if you need to. What did you not notice about you in that conversation? Because it will give you lots and lots of data. And you might perhaps realize that perhaps you were saying things in a less than helpful way, or your body language wasn't that great. But if you can lift yourself out and watch it like you're watching a film on a slow speed, you will start to get more information about this relationship thing. It will be less about the content of that discussion and more around what's going on physically between you two, because that can be the hard bit to break down. So Michelle, that conversation you had with somebody and they said you had different communication strands. If you could have lifted yourself above it at the start of that, you would have probably noticed that. So you'll still have the conversation, but it will be from a much more logical than an emotional place. So you can get to a solution quicker, and it tends to de-escalate it. You might still disagree, but you're disagreeing from a logical place, not from an emotional place. So the communications will continue. You're not having the communication breakdown, you're just disagreeing on a particular issue, and you can work through that with other tools. So if you can in the moment, lift yourself above. If you're in a meeting with people and you're not talking, it's quite a good fun thing to do actually, because you can watch the whole thing as if it's playing out on stage, and you can see how you'll suddenly sit up more because you'll notice that you're slouching, and you'll sit on your hands instead of having your arms folded because you'll realize you look defensive even though you're not. So it's a really, really good technique to do, but it does need some practice. Again, you can practice it at home around the dinner table when the kids are misbehaving and you want to shout at them. So second thing, you've had a disagreement with somebody. Instead of going back and trying to argue your point, you can use something called back chat fed. And this is about responding with emotion. So remember, when something's happened, when you're disagreeing with someone, both of you have triggered an emotional response. And you can't use logic when emotion's triggered, because the brain switches it off. It switches on emotion, it switches on adrenaline and cortisol that allows you to react quickly. So it stops the processing bit, and you need processing to logically think. If you go back to someone with how you felt, when you did this, this is how it made me feel, it's really unlikely they're going to disagree with you, because they can't disagree with how you feel. So it has to be around how it made you feel, not about the thing you're disagreeing on, or whether you think that you're right and they're wrong, but how it made you feel. People cannot argue with you if you feel bad, because you just feel bad. It's quite a vulnerable place to put yourself, so it's not always going to be the best tool. But if you can, and if you feel safe to, when you said this, when you did that, or when we had this disagreement, this is how it made me feel. And it will disarm them, because they can't argue with you, and you're not discussing the point that you're disagreeing on. It's about how they've made you feel. So as I've got an example, I think. So the first bit is a fact, not an opinion. When you said this in front of the team, something they can't argue with. So what I think you said is wrong. It needs to be a fact that they can't disagree with. When you did this, when you said that, when you disagreed with that project, this is how it made me feel. It made me feel like I was failing, and that's not a good thing to feel. It's the emotion you feel, the emotion you felt when they said something. It's not about I felt that you were wrong, because that's an opinion. That's your view of the situation. It's about how it actually made you feel. So make it about you. They can't argue with it because it's how you feel. They might think you're being a bit silly, but they still can't argue with it. And if they say that's a bit silly, says, well, that's how I feel. I feel like I'm failing, and I feel it's made me feel really embarrassed in front of my team. And then you can get into a discussion about it. So it does make you a bit vulnerable, but that can work as well, because you've dropped your defense. You're trying to reach out and say, you know, it was not great. This is what you said, and this is how it made me feel. So the first bit needs to be a fact, not an opinion. The second bit needs to be the emotion that you felt, not how you felt about the conversation, about how it made you feel. Does that make sense? Any questions? Quite hard to do. Again, this works really well at home when you're arguing about that dishwasher. Again, this is how, when you told me I'd stacked the dishwasher wrong, this is how it made me feel. It can't be argued with, and it just it shifts the whole conversation. So in the emotional situation, two people disagreeing, you're both triggered emotionally, the logic switched on, you're not going to, it's unlikely you're going to get anywhere other than one person winning and one person losing. The only way you can fight emotion is with more emotion. You can't fight it with logic. I say it quite a lot. So if you're feeling angry and someone tells you to calm down, it does not work. It's the logical thing to do, but you can't do it because you're emotionally triggered. It's the same with this. Oh, you can only fight, you know, if someone's angry, give them a hug if they'll let you, because it will calm it down. So you can only fight emotion with more emotion. So back chat fed. This is what you did, or this is what you said, and this is how it made me feel. So helicopter up to observe it, because you'll know if you helicopter up and replay the thing, what's the best tool to use, whether this is going to put you in too vulnerable a state or whether it's actually going to move you forward. And then, and this is a good one for your one, Michelle, I think. So we've disagreed with somebody and they've come back and said, I think your communication style is different to mine. So get them to repeat it. Tell me again what you think isn't working, what you think is needed. So listen to them, let them tell the story, and take notes as you go. Take notes down. And then what you're doing is playing it back to them. So tell me again all your notes, and then you want to read it back in a structure. You know, we had that disagreement. I'd like us to clarify this if we can, so we can move forward. Tell me again what you think isn't working on this project, on this change. Tell me again why you think this is the wrong solution, or what I'm doing is the wrong thing. Capture your notes, and then you play it back. So just to make sure I'm clear on what you've said, this is what I think you said. So play back their own words, because it shows them that you're listening. And again, a lot of the subconscious is kicking in at this point. They're not really listening to the words that much. They're hearing that you've heard them and you're repeating it back. So they're hearing their own words, which makes them feel good. So it's a lot of this is the subconscious working. So this is what I think you said, just to clarify that. Just to be sure I've understood, I think when it comes to communication styles, you would like something more scripted. Is that right? So that would be that one for you, Michelle. Then the situation. What is the situation in? And this is the problem statement for the project, or this is the newsletter that we're trying to write. So the situation that this thing is happening in, the project or the change or the strategy or the communication. This is the problem where we're at. So this is what I think you said. This is what we're trying to resolve as a project. And then tell the story. I use 5 Ps. Again, it's in quite a few of the forums and it's in the book, but this is the purpose of this project or change. These are the people that are involved in it. This is the process we're following, and this is what success looks like. So you're structuring again what that thing is. So again, Michelle, for that communication thing, this is the purpose of the newsletters that we're sending out. It needs to go out to all staff. The plan is to pull together X, Y, and Z, and we'll know it's successful when everybody's got a copy and replied to it, whatever that is. So you're telling the structure of the thing that you're, the bigger thing that you're doing. And then your so what. So what are your actions? So if I do this, if I provide you with this script, have I captured everything correctly? And this is what you want as a next step. So you're basically repeating back what they've said, sitting that what they've said in the scenario, in the situation, and then agreeing an action that you're going to do next, which should calm it all down. And again, this is very logical. So if you've done the back chat fed, then that's got you back into the logical state. If that's not appropriate and you do the playback, you're giving them the chance to air what they said again, and that will reduce down their emotional state. And then you're repeating it all back, which will reduce it down again. And then you've got a structure to the project or the change or whatever it is you're working on, and an agreed action next. Any questions on that one? Does it make sense? So a lot of this is a subtlety. And if you're going into it, remember I said you need your strategy. You're not going in with a fighting back on this strategy. It's just a structured tool to get the information out. You will be approaching this in a much more logical way as well. So your emotions will be reduced. You'll have some ideas about those actions, but you're going in trying to just move it past. So you're moving past the emotion of it. You've not got that hidden strategy. And because you're taking notes and listening, that's what they'll see in your body language. They won't see you're saying the right things, but actually you're looking quite defensive or looking like you're really frustrated. So it will just move, it will help you to manage that as well. And then we need to build trust for the future. So this might be something that's happened before, it might be with somebody new, but you need to build trust for the future because you don't want this happening again. And this works for anybody. If you've got a new boss, do this for your new boss. You promise to do something. So in this last action, we've got, so if I've captured this correctly, this is my next action. I'll promise to do it by next Friday. Promise when you're going to do something. Do the thing. If you can do it a bit earlier than when you promised, great. Then tell them that you've done it. Remember when I promised you last week that I would have this for you close of play Friday? Well, here it is. I've done it. So remind them that you promised to do it and when you promised to do it by. Do the thing, and if you send it to them, send it to them. And if you've delivered it early, tell them that as well. And then you repeat that process. So the next time you're doing something with that person, I'll promise to do it by Wednesday. Remember, I promised to do this thing by Wednesday. Here it is, a day early. And do that 3-4 times. And when you do that 3 or 4 times, you're subconsciously building trust pattern. They will trust you that when you promise to do something, you will do it. And that gives you a bit more free will with other things. They're not going to go against you in things because they know that you're trustworthy. This works for, once you've done this, you've built that, it's really hard to break that trust. So quite often it's easy to break trust because there's no pattern. If someone says, can you do that by Friday? You just send it to them. They don't notice that you've promised to do it and you have done it. You've just done it. This way, it's sticking in their mind that you promised to do something, you did it, and you did it early if you could, and you've done that 3 or 4 times. So for most people, when they're asked to do work, they just do it, and it's not that nobody notices, but there's not that pattern of recognition. Promise, do it, remind them you promised, and remind them you did it. And you might say the last 3 things I promised, and then you can test it. You can test out where you are in that relationship. So when you think you've got them hooked and they're trusting you, would you be comfortable if we did this differently this time, or if I did that? So you can test it with a small thing. And if that doesn't create any issues, then you know you've got them on the trust thing. If they're still a bit wobbly, then go through another cycle of promise, do, and remind. It's something we don't do. Well, maybe you do. Does anybody say, remember you asked for this on Friday and I sent it on Wednesday? Does anybody ever do that? So we're all like inundated with stuff, asking and bringing stuff in. We remember when people don't do it, but we don't remember when they've done it. This is a way of them remembering. Yeah, you always deliver what I asked you to do, and you're normally pretty good. You normally do it before time. So it's building trust. So they'll trust you with things in the future. So even if they're not agreeing with what you're doing, they'll trust you. So helicopter up, observe it, see what's going on. Don't respond in the moment unless you really, really have to. And if you do, then make sure you breathe and calm things down. If you feel able, do the vulnerable thing and say, when you said that, this is how it made me feel. They cannot argue with it. Do the structured thing. So into the meeting again, remind me again what your thoughts are. Play it back to them. Always play it back. So if I've heard it correctly, this is what you're saying. This is the situation we're in. This is what we're going to do. And this is what my next action is. Does that capture it? And then do the action, promise, do it, and remind them. And it will soon shift that person's views of you. Because again, a lot of it is subconscious. So if you've got a difficult relationship with somebody, they're doing what you're doing. They're coming up, they're saying the right words, but they've got their inner strategy and you're noticing that. So it builds it up and builds it up. And I've done this and it absolutely works. You may still disagree on the content, but you're disagreeing logically on something that you can go away and get more data on. And that's fine, because there's not always one answer to something, but you're not disagreeing emotionally. And that's where the relationship breakdown is when it becomes much more emotional. It might make you feel a little bit like you're giving in, because you're essentially doing something different to get this relationship back on track, and they're not having to do anything. And I know that can be really, really hard with those really difficult people that you really don't want to let win, but they're not winning. All you're doing is, if you think of it more as facilitating a good relationship with somebody I need a good working relationship with, then they're not winning and you're actually winning, because you're ninjaing them. You're getting them to shift how they think and behave about you without them noticing it. So instead of thinking I'm doing all the work and I used to say sometimes you'd need a shower after seeing some of the big egos in the NHS and you're having to let them win. Don't think of it that way. And it's hard to, because again, it'll be there in your mind, however you present it. Think, I am facilitating this turning into a good working relationship, getting them on board to trust me, so that in the future I'll be able to do the things in the way I want to do them and they won't challenge it so much. Any questions? I'm just looking at some of the comments there. So culture of celebration is great, Graham. Really recommends that celebration, which I don't think we do often enough either. That makes sense to everyone? There must be some questions, or has anyone used anything like this or got any examples?
I think the last bit that you... Oh, go for it, sorry.
So I was just going to say, it's good to be reminded of things. Sometimes a lot of us will know this and maybe have forgotten we know this. So
yeah, it's so easy to react as well. If someone's reacting badly to us, it's what the brain does. So just being able to, again, lift yourself out of it can really help and slow things down a bit. Alexis.
I was thinking it makes sense when what you were saying earlier, to always, never reply in anger. But equally, I'm thinking a couple of things that have happened recently, and could I, with good conscience, say that I'm letting them win or feel like that, and how do you get over that? And I hear what you're saying about overall, you're still the one that's winning because you're doing the thing that you need to do. But there's probably a couple of personalities that would make that harder.
Yeah, there's always one or two that it makes it much harder with. But if you can nail those difficult people in this way, then it's just celebrate it, because you have absolutely nailed it. And I don't like to use the term win and lose, because it's not really about that. It's about building the relationship. But you've really achieved something great if you can win over those people, and get them, particularly if you can get them trusting you, and if they're difficult with lots of people. So see it as a win, chalk it up. Yeah. And it's an outcome. It's a good outcome for everyone as well. So it's not just you're winning and they're losing. Everyone's getting the right outcome, but you've got that extra point. Kate has written, she likes a helicopter view. It's quite interesting to do that if you can do it, and it gets easier the more you do it. But just observing what's going on can be really interesting, especially if you can see yourself. And do you know, if you do this work, Paul, you put work around them. What did you mean by, what was that in relation to? So that was a bit earlier.
Yeah, I guess it wasn't so much in terms of emotional conflict with somebody, but if somebody has got a fundamentally different position, perhaps, well, basically, they want blue, I want red, and you think we're never going to agree on that, so I'll work around them and paint my part of the room red, and they can do blue. Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of scenarios where people just got different agendas, and no matter how much logic that you go into, they have got set agendas. But I guess what we're really talking about here is more sort of emotional conflict. So I guess I was thinking about a different problem, to be honest.
Yeah. And that one, do you know, if you hopefully if you come on the course, there is a cracking tool that will get them wanting the red or the blue, whatever you wanted. So it's all of these things, they're all for different scenarios. So sometimes you can work around something, sometimes you can just plow ahead. It depends who they are and how important they are and whether they can influence what's going on. So always think about, in relation to what you're having to do, what, you know, where does this person sit? And sometimes you do just work around them, or you don't agree with them and ignore them. But just thinking about relationships, but this is particularly for when you really need to re-engage with that relationship because it's broken down. And these, you know, they're very simple to do. They're not, none of this, it's just pausing, thinking, the emotional bit if you can, the replay, playing it back really absolutely works. And then the promises, because you're going to do the things anyway. So just remind them that you promised and you did do it. Other types of people who lost causes. Nothing will ever know. I don't, what, do you know, is Trump a lost cause because you disagree with what he's doing? So Trump's achieving some stuff. You may not agree with what he's achieving. I used to have this regular argument with someone about Margaret Thatcher. I said, I didn't like Margaret Thatcher any more than they did, but she knew what she was doing and she achieved what she set out to do. So the trick is persuading them to do the right thing rather than the wrong thing, because if you can persuade someone who's good at getting stuff done to do the right thing, then you know, you're into a good. And quite often we don't learn from the people we disagree with. So I would say for someone like Trump, you might dislike Elon Musk, whatever, look at what they're doing because they're achieving things. And when we don't learn from people who are good at achieving what they set out to do, there's a huge failing there because it's the thing they're doing that we're disagreeing with, not necessarily how they're doing it. There'll be some things in there of how they deliver that you think, oh, if we copied that method, but we were applying it to doing some good in the world, then just how successful could things be? So I would always say, don't assume just because someone's doing something you disagree with or you think it's the wrong thing that they're not very good at doing. Because if they weren't very good at doing, then you would just ignore them because they would never achieve anything. So I always use people like that as a way to learn. How do they get done what they do? And then translate that back. So again, at the last session, we took, I think Trump came up at the last session when we did sorry, that was a different session I did. But if you can imagine how somebody else would fix something, the more further away they are from somebody you would respect, the more data you'll get. So I talked about AI the other day, about if we were trying to implement AI and we didn't really know whether it was the right thing to do, what would, and we thought it was about modifying processes or automated process, what would Elon Musk do? And people said, oh, he would just implement the AI solution. I said he wouldn't. He would stop doing the process to see what would break, as is doing with Doge just now. Cut all the funding, see what breaks, and then we'll throw money back at the stuff that we need to throw money at. And it gets rid of the waste or perceived waste. So if you're trying to automate a process, don't jump straight into AI. Switch it off and see what breaks, because it will tell you what needs automated, because a lot of process will be redundant and you're just repeating that with the AI. So thinking about people like that can really help you think differently about how you might do stuff. I've sort of gone a bit off thingy, but it came up the other day. So
I think my angle on this was more about the building the trust, and like, you know, are there certain people that you will never trust? You never
might not trust them, but
that's
they
what I mean.
trust you. Yeah. So you might never trust Trump, but if you can get Trump trusting you, as Elon Musk has got, then he's just going to go, you know, I trust you, go and do some stuff. And then you can go and do the good stuff. So it doesn't need to be someone you trust. It needs to be them trusting you. And if you think they're doing bad, but you can get them trusting you, then you deliver what you say you're going to deliver. So on you go. They won't be checking in on everything. So yeah, get Trump to trust you, and you can do all the good in the world. Because everything you're doing can be angled to suit someone's preference. You can write, you know, you can write whatever you're doing as an objective that will match something that they think is right. So if they trust you to do that thing you've said and they think it's a good thing, and then you sell it as a different good thing to someone else, as long as it is a good thing, because it's all about changing the wording. So if you say to Trump, it's going to be efficient and we're going to save money, taxpayers' money, that's all he cares about, and he trusts you to do it. So you can go off and then implement the good social policy stuff.
How well does this model work across sort of international groups? I mean, Trump's Trump, but he's an American, and Americans do things in a different way from the Brits. They look like us, they sound like us a bit, but they think in a very different way. And I've worked in Europe and I've worked in North Africa, and sometimes the people are less worried about results. It's more about relationships, depending on where you are, and the balance of what you get, how you do this. I think it can vary, and you've got to be aware of that. And
I think
and variations in body language. Sorry, just go. You could step back and do the helicopter, but you've got to understand the local body language. What's important.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I don't have the experience of doing it in different cultures, but yeah, you would need to understand the local cultures and how things work. I've done a little bit of stuff with some people in India, and I know there's a lot of promising that they will do things and then they don't do it.
Well, yeah, they promise what they say they think you want, not necessarily they will achieve.
So I think with all of this, it's understanding the people. So, you know, it's all about, so if this is on a one-to-one thing, but understanding their culture and their way of working, because then you can phrase things in the way that's going to work for them. I think, so it would be interesting to test that. I don't know if as frameworks they would work as well, but the promising and doing it and promising and doing it, I think is probably a human thing. It's just the words that you might use around that, that would shift the thinking. So I said we wouldn't run over. Oof. So that is, I think, how to ninja reconnection and re-engaging with you know, you've had the fallout, the breakdown in communications. Have in your mind the thing that you want to do and make it a good thing, not a strategy to win. Do the emotional to emotion if you can. If it doesn't feel too vulnerable, this is how it made me feel. Listen to them, play it back, put it in, set it in the context of the scenario that you're in and what you'll do next, and then do it, promise, and do that a few times before testing that. It won't work for everything. This is particularly, I think this is quite niche for those really difficult conversations at work. But again, it might work at home. I've not tested it so much at home, not consciously anyway, but I'm sure it would work at home. So I would love to know, before we finish off, what is your biggest surprise or learning from today? If you could shout it out or type it in the chat box, I would love to know if you've learned anything or if there are any surprises or how you might use it in the future.
I like the helicopter view, the other methods. I think, I mean, I remember many years ago, I got into an over testosterone event, and it did get quite ugly. And actually stepping back would have been very, very useful.
Yeah, it is. And you know, it just, even if you're in a meeting and you're really bored, but you can't escape, It's quite fun to do because it gives you a whole different view of what's going
It's got
on.
to sound devious.
Brilliant, some good learning there around. So helicopter body language, structure, but yeah, always think about, unless you match your thoughts with what you're saying, it will get picked up. It will get, you've seen, you know, Boris Johnson's, you know, all the lockdown stuff and the parties, you know, he's lying, you know, he doesn't believe in any of that stuff, so why would you? So if your thoughts and your words don't match, the subconscious will pick up on that. Yeah, if you're not contributing to a meeting, you should leave. So I would reverse that a bit. So again, if you can take somebody of what they do, that might be a good one. You should leave. But people tell me that they're in meetings all day back to back and they haven't got time to do the work. And I was like, well, are you contributing to all the meetings? And like, no, but I'm just there for information. I was like, well, don't go. And the response is, well, someone needs to tell me I don't need to go. And I say, well, you have autonomy. Why don't you say, unless I'm needed at this meeting, I'm going to get on with some real work and I'll find out after what it was about. Someone will update me. So there's a bit of, you know, reversing that almost. Say, do I need to be at this meeting, or have I got better things to do with my time? It's that fear of missing out. I think with virtual as well, it's more people invited to more meetings virtually than when we were in the office, because you would just catch up with stuff. So some of that is back to Graham.
Yeah, so what we actually do in my organisation is we apply a rule. If you receive a meeting agenda for an internal and there's a meeting invite and there's no agenda or reason for why you're there, you automatically reject it without discussion. You don't even push back to say why you want me there. That's the company rule, so you go with it. So it stops that shotgun approach of just sending invites out to hundreds of people and see who attends and see what they bring. Brilliant.
Love that. I used to say to people, if you're copied into an email, don't read it.
Yeah, agreed.
Because if you're not part of the email, there's nothing to do.
Yeah, I did
notice that.
I actually got rid of email in the NHS because I just deleted them. I didn't, and people just stopped sending me stuff because I would never respond. And if they needed me to see it, then it was like, well, what do you want from me out of why are you sending it to me? What do you want from me out of this? So I just deleted them. So I hardly had any emails that I actually needed to read. It was great. It can be done. So we're 2 minutes to go. If you're interested, do get in touch. We are introducing a challenge audit now. So if you have a particular thing and you want 20 on it, give me a shout. Our greatest hopes and fears then. Fears. Alexis, did you have a good time? Or was it a good use of time?
It was a good use of time, thank you.
Brilliant.
Yes.
And there was no singing, and we're not going to overrun because I've got a minute left. Have we got some new ideas, golden nuggets, worked out why people might be offended perhaps? Again, it's that body language thing, and some new tools to try out. In the main, hands up. Brilliant. You achieved your agenda. Well done. In record time. You've got a minute left. I love giving people time back. I don't know what you'll do with it, but go and stand outside for a minute. But yeah, do get in touch, and we'll see you in 2 weeks for the next one is benefit blindness. So ensuring there's a real problem before selling your solutions. So I have a real beef about benefits. So that'll be a good one. Have a lovely, wonderful evening, everyone, and see you in a couple of weeks.
Cheers.
Thanks, Tammy.
Brilliant.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.